Welcome to video number 5 of 6. See, I had to think about that. We're going to go back to tackling one myth today. This is part of the series, 7 myths about women entrepreneurs that even smart people believe. And the myth today is one that really gets to me. It's potentially the most insidious, because this one starts to blame the women. So not only can we not, won't we do all sorts of things, as you've seen from previous myths if you've been with me on these series, or please go back and have a look. But now we're saying, oh, women do that to each other. Ouch. Let's unpack this a little bit further. Let me launch some material I've prepared for you. So, apparently, women hold other women back. Well, my first question challenging this is it really all women? Is that what we're saying? And let's remain at the nice high level here, but, let me say feminism, suffragettes, internal champions, most EDI teams are almost entirely made of women. HR teams are made of women, but maybe HR is not a great example. That can be a little bit of a gray area. But really, the big movements, the big efforts that have shifted our thinking and practices around women have come from women. And that in itself is an issue. Do we really want to always burden those that are disadvantaged with fixing that disadvantage? So, keeping in mind that the stories we tell ourselves are how resources and opportunities are distributed, made available, it really is difficult to swallow when we say, well, actually, the women hold these opportunities back from each other. What's worse is that part of that is actually true. Please do not cut this bit and quote me as if, well, Shima said it's actually true. It is in part, in small proportion of the business and entrepreneurial population, actually true. And that's due to 2 issues, so to speak. Both of these will resonate with you even if the naming is new to you. So one, which is the one that's the most common, is this queen bee syndrome. Oh yes, so-and-so is a queen bee. And the insinuation there is queen bee sits back, expects to be served, must be adored, and is not particularly a benign dictator either. Very self-serving, very competitive, jealous, mean. You can start to put a lot of negative adjectives to said queen bee. But queen bees, in reality, the insect, is a female insect that sits at the heart and is the focus and connection to a network of female worker bees that work in beautiful union to meet the same objectives. They look after each other. A bee community is a wonderfully collaborative community, and one of the few that is truly collaborative at that scale. Ants, termites being the others. Starting to think, should we be looking more at insects here? I digress. I sometimes do that. So, queen bee, really unfortunate naming. I'd be delighted to be a queen bee because it means I'm serving my sisters. We're all pulling in the same direction. We're creating an active community that's looking after people and planet. Think about honey, pollination, and so on. The bee metaphor would be fantastic. So, unfortunate naming for what is supposedly an insulting label. But let's lose the label of queen bee, but look at the behavior of some of these women, because sadly we all know them. We do know a woman with very sharp elbows that will not support other women, and that, as this little cartoon I've put for you there, really wants to be at the center of attention with the guys. And it's not necessarily man-woman, i.e. it's not necessarily sexual, though again, some of it is. But no, it pretty much is, I want to be one of the gang. I am one of the dominant culture. And that's where tokenism comes in. Now, tokenism, here we're going to talk about it in the context of men and women, but tokenism happens in any context where you have a majority group that share a characteristic and a minority group in and on that particular characteristic. So, majority of business leadership is male dominated. And as we know, in entrepreneurship, women entrepreneurs make up 25 to 30% of entrepreneurs. That makes them a minority group. And because they're at or under the 30%, that makes them tokens. And that's when something called token dynamics kicks in. Let me explain. Token dynamics is when the token group starts to behave artificially. And they behave artificially in one of two ways. One is they overemphasize with their group's stereotype. So it in itself isn't even a particularly true reflection of that group, but there is a certain stereotype. And in this case, women would become overly feminine, overly girly, and we know a lot of women that are like that. And I spent some of my work, for example, saying I'm going to reclaim pink, because being very pink is also seen as an over-identification with the minority and a feminine stereotype. It's girly, pink, sparkles. You know what I'm getting at. I'm going to pause and have a little digression here as well. When red and pink pigment came out originally, red, and it was never stayed red very much, so it very quickly became pink, was the colors of royals. It was an expensive color. So how and why it became an indication of, oh well, that's substandard, that's feminized, that's not as good, is ludicrous. At the level of the color, let alone at the level of the concept. Why should something that is done well by women or is more done by women is suddenly less? Think equal work, equal pay, or more likely equal work, unequal pay, but not the topic of this video. Let's go back to minority groups and tokenism. So here we are. Option one in this artificial behavior is to over-identify with that girly stereotype, and it's likely to be a little bit sickly sweet, it's younger. It's not the kind of behavior you necessarily value at work, whether rightly or wrongly. But let's just take that as typically not what's valued at work. Your second option for this artificial behavior is to overly identify with the majority stereotype, which is where expressions like hypermasculinism comes in. Your average man is not hypermasculine, but your average token woman going in and over-identifying with the majority masculine stereotype adopts hypermasculine behaviors, ideals, stances. And that's where you end up with these overly aggressive, overly competitive, the mean girl syndrome, I think. You shouldn't be calling it queen bee, but it's the mean girl syndrome. And as that is part of a dominant majority, it is more accepted, it is more recognized, even though there will be comments and there will be some pushback and penalties for being overly aggressive, overly dominant. But it also comes with admiration. You're good at what you do, not afraid to step up. Oh yes, she's not afraid to take the difficult decisions. And they're very good at fitting in with the dominant leadership and starting to position themselves as actually a favorable, a safe choice for opportunities, for promotions, for funding. And then you get all the stories. My worst boss was a woman. My worst working relationship was a woman. My worst supplier was a woman. Because they've had to adapt and really develop these artificial behaviors to the point where they're unrecognizable to themselves. They might be stressed because these artificial behaviors are not sitting well with them. It's not really their authentic self, and you then get burnout. Or it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The token dynamics, will work well for people who already have these tendencies, will then be rewarded. They will then feel that they were entirely justified to be that way. And the circle continues and closes. And that person is none the wiser that there's anything wrong with them. I used to work with someone who would say she knows how to get the best out of people, when in fact what that meant, but not in her mind, she genuinely thought she did. What that meant in practice was that everyone was terrified of her, and therefore they try to do what they want, what she wanted, not necessarily how she wanted, and then there was backlash there. You can imagine the scenarios there. But that's not really getting the best out of people if you're leading by fear. So, tokenism, queen bees, all part of the myth, part of contributing to real aspects of it, and part of it is just creating, like the bees, I'll stretch the metaphor, and adding flowers and color to myth that actually isn't true if tokenism wasn't there. And tokenism results only in some women within the minority group adopting the hypermasculine behavior. So, this myth is horrible to women. It makes us feel bad. It makes us work bad. It makes you think that we're bad. Horrible word, bad. But actually the worst part of it is that at the foundation, it is created with a system that promotes, supports, and makes most visible these types of women, and then paints us all with the same brush. So let's move away from the myths that tell us we can't, we don't, we should, we shouldn't, and let's focus on the systems that enable negative behavior, biases, and these unequal opportunities and resources. As usual, I invite you to fix the system, not the women. Move away, step away from training, unless it is to train potentially your entire workforce to think differently about the system, or if you're going to think about training women on how to, of giving them space, visibility, and tools to disrupt the system. Women need to see each other, to know where we are, to know we stand shoulder to shoulder. Most importantly, in this discussion around women hold women back, women need to know that that's not true, that we do stand shoulder to shoulder, we do lend a hand to pull people up behind us, we promote the people above us, and that it is actually a community of bees that work together to pull in the similar direction to make the world a better place for people and planet. That's if you want to create something for the women. That's the balm rather than the medicine, so to speak. What we really need is to fix the system. How we talk about women, how we think about women, where investment gets done, who gets sent and who gets given the best projects, opportunities, assignments, who gets the resources to have the biggest and best teams. Where are these opportunities going? Fix the system, not the women. If that has challenged your thinking, let me know. Please like or share if this has made you think. Leave us questions, leave us comments. I will personally look at them and answer everything that comes through. We are Cambridge Bast. We're a Cambridge, UK based business. We work within the Cambridge ecosystem, but we also work with ecosystems around the world and with entrepreneurs and accelerators and investors and mentors from across the world. Let's fix the system together. And if we can help you do it, let us know. But I look forward to your comments on this video. If you haven't seen the previous videos, by all means, please have a look at those. If you have been with us so far, thank you. And please click on the next one about the final myths, 7 out of 7. See you next time.